Hi, everyone. I'm Riley Redinger, and I'm just here to tell a little bit of a story today. So if you'd like to listen, here's two. Growing up, my family had a license plate cover that used to say, "I love my three boys." I was the fourth born. I never really had an issue with it growing up, but I never changed it. And I remember now getting a little bit more small comfort in it when I finally came out to my mother over a decade before I even came out publicly. In preschool, I had my best friend named Chelsea Hume, and we would play house and dress up together every day. I used to play mom every single time. This is not my, oh my god, I'm trans moment. This is just the first time of something different for me. The preschool teacher told me to stop playing dress up and go and play outside. Still did it from time to time until that teacher called in my parents to discuss. Growing up, I didn't think I was terribly different. I loved and excelled in sports, theater, and school. Was a little bit flamboyant, but, I was an energetic little kid. I had my little bowl cut and my two gigantic front teeth that I couldn't actually fit into until probably about now. Athletics was our pastime, every single one of us. Every weekend was filled with some little sporting event, little camp, little tournament, or an adventure. I moved way too many times growing up, and all across the United States. I had to learn to adapt, keep moving, to perpetually the new kid. Learning all the new social norms depending upon where I'm at. They can't stop the clock. Those bad days will end. It's hard to express your internal feelings when you're young and you don't have any sort of vocab for it. We spent a lot of time, the beginning of my puberty years was youngish years, listening to TV, listening to music, playing sports. Most kids did. I remember a lot of our time was spent while waiting for the bus, watching Jerry Springer. It's the very first time I ever heard transsexual. I said, oh my god, that's definitely not me, obviously. Didn't even think it could be me. The internet was in its infancy, and so it helped, but it really didn't. Internalized transphobia really started getting to me. I couldn't be one of those. I remember seeing titles on Jerry Springer. My girlfriend's my boyfriend. Just couldn't do that. All these people in my family would giggle at it. All those people at the movies, all those horrid movies would cackle. You're supposed to be laughed at. Mainstream TV laughed at it. Men in a dress. How absurd. I started getting larger, with more defined muscles, hairier, the usual. One thing that I didn't know that was happening was dysphoria started hitting harder. I stopped wanting to look into the mirror. I didn't know that's what it was at the time. I didn't have the vocabulary. What does dysphoria feel like? It feels like that annoying, horrendous coworker. It's those interactions that drain every single bit of your energy. The only problem is that coworker is inside you. That coworker is you. Is that constant reminder that something is wrong. You show up in every mirror, your picture, an outfit, and interact with others. You can't quite put your finger on it, and you don't have the knowledge behind it. Did I stare at women because I fancied them? Or was I envious of them? Attraction or admiration? Do I want to be with you, or do I want to be you? When I spoke this out to a friend, I remember them saying, that's not normal, right? So let me lean on the things that I can understand for the vocab, that I can express my feelings, because I don't know what the hell I mean. I just went into the alt-emo life. I tried growing out my hair, wearing black, listening to punk pop, as many of us did. The little emo alt kids were all my friends. I could be with them, because we didn't fit in the mainstream crowd. I was a nerd. I was a little greasy, pimple-faced nerd who was in every single sport that I didn't get into at the time. I made acquaintances through that sport. I even had my little sporty, preppy friends. Black hair, Hot Topic, Spencer's, Vans, you name it. I felt like it was a good mask. But that was unacceptable for my family. Maybe not in a malicious way. But you need to fit into the box so that you get all of those check marks done for your future. You need to walk that line. We're just going to bump you back in no matter what. That was when I knew that I wasn't going to really have any voice in whatever I had feelings for at the time. Was I gay? I've heard of that. Yeah, some boys can be hot, like, Brad Pitt, Leonardo DiCaprio, and the like. But it can't be right. I can't see myself with any boy my age, or even think about that in the future. Those weren't the right feelings. I kept going down a spiral, asking myself every single day, strongly. That little venture into my self-expression of non-traditional ways resulted in a snapback into the status quo from being a male-born athletic child moving through the U.S. southern states. You smile. You make people feel comfortable. You always say please. You dance for their comfort. I love my family. I didn't have a terrible childhood. I was always fed as much as a wrestler could. I was always clothed. I always had a roof over my head. I never had to worry if I was going to be safe to be there. I was the youngest by 6 years to my closest sibling. I learned from observing them. They were my role models. I saw what they could do. I saw what they couldn't do. I saw what they could get away with, and specifically focused on their societal norms placed on them by their masculine energy in the house. I remember I had one Christmas. It was in Indiana. I received a gift from all my brothers. They'd all gotten together and gotten me something with their allowance, snagged their little 7-year-old sibling a gift. When I opened it up on that Christmas day, it was a little Ken doll. I remember being so excited and holding that box. And then the world came back for a second. I realized that all of them were giggling. It was a girl's toy. No harm, no foul. Just a little kidding between siblings and parents and, I remember sneaking that toy into the tub in the months to follow because it was the only place I could be alone. No one could see me in shame playing with the girl's toy. This in no way caused me to be trans, mind you. And no one even knew what trans meant at that time. At least for me. Just showed me what was acceptable and societally allowed for behaviors. We were all wrestlers. Even my mother was a wrestling cheerleader. We all knew how to be tough. We don't take no shit from anybody. We don't get pushed over. That was an easy rule to follow. Just the Reds versus everybody else. I just never knew that I was fighting my internal dialogue. No wrestlers I knew were gay or even flamboyant. God forbid. It's just you just didn't. I kept fighting myself, struggling to understand. My brothers, some more in particular, showed me compassion and strength. They all had their cracks in their own emotion. But some were strong enough to stay stoic throughout. That was the amount of strength and love that my family I will always stay with. I was 15 the first time I tried to kill myself. Years of puberty, watching with the stain as my body matured. Each day was a slog. Those walls kept moving in closer and faster. My siblings at that time were spread to the wind, spread across the United States, even one in Afghanistan. My father was traveling for work most days, and my mother sucked into the news because they were reasonably worried about my brother in the military. I was just left to my own devices. I didn't feel comfortable reaching out. I honestly thought there wasn't a proper way of expressing my feelings to my athletic friends, and all of my emo friends told me I was just depressed. I couldn't bring it up with my mother. But all of those years in athletics, my family had an almost endless supply of painkillers. I took a handful of them. I went upstairs. I tried to go to sleep. And it didn't work. I was too much of a wimp to give it the no failure try. I ended up throwing them up, stayed home for the next day. I made that decision as a 15-year-old child. I remember my desperation to stop the confusion, and what I didn't know at the time was dysphoria. That next day is when I decided to keep moving my feet. If I was too weak to take myself out, I just had to keep moving. I just had to push as hard as I can every single day until my body breaks down, gives up. But maybe it'll just shut down. Lifted, we played all the sports. I tried as hard as I possibly could. I didn't eat, all meanwhile still smiling and dancing to keep people comfortable. I ran my body into the ground over those last few years. Never learned about a little bit of self-preservation. I've learned a lot from that today. I had one last push for my own autonomy. I made some queer, although they didn't know it at the time, friends in my choir in my junior and senior year. It allowed me to tap into a little bit of that empathy and comfort in myself. Didn't understand myself completely, but I knew I could slightly put my shoulders down just a little bit. It was comfortable. I remember losing bets where I would wear these women's jeans from Hollister, double zeros. I would make the bet with myself and lose just so I could wear those to school. I didn't understand why I wanted to wear them. It was just an urge. It was terribly embarrassing. Internalized transphobia is a dick. If someone would have just talked to me just a little bit, to help me get through these emotions, I think it could have been a whole lot different. It wasn't like it wasn't easy to see that my entire body screamed I'm uncomfortable. In high school, I had what I like to call a reverse Troy Bolton moment from High School Musical. At that point, I was a good little boy. I had a little religious, safe, and polite girlfriend. Lining myself up to go to college, I was that model good kid my senior year, and I was exhausted. I kept that mask up for so long. Would this be it, though? Was this the life that I was supposed to be excited about? Getting to 20, getting to 30, getting to 40? Life was settling, wasn't it? I wasn't excited about any of it. Being exhausted, I had the great idea, quitting wrestling, to focus on what made me happy. And at that time, that was choir. I was pretty good at it, too. I've been putting on my mask my entire life, just so I could change whatever personality the character needed. Couldn't quit wrestling. My parents ended up saying no. It made sense looking back on it, but they only blamed it on my girlfriend at the time. I couldn't even have my own thoughts and feelings and make decisions on my own. Finished out the last bit of team portion of the season. Kept my feet moving. I was undefeated until the very last match of mine. My last competition was that night, and I cried in front of an entire gym while pacing before the match. I couldn't hold in any of my emotions anymore. I had worked so hard in wrestling, in choir, and just all of that weight in my shoulders, trying to hold that shit up. I was just starting to feel a little bit of enjoyment in singing, in dancing, in theater in general. But that match also landed on the same night as my very last performance. I lost my match, and we drove back to try and catch the last musical in time for my solo, and we were late. There's no one to blame. I hold on these little failures myself, and it was just a little icing on top of that cake. I finally tried to explore a little bit more of me, and it ended up being a disappointment. That's the way that cookie crumbles. Back into the emotional close-off husk of a personal life frame. I ended up going to the Naval Academy to follow my brother's footsteps. I was the academically weak one, and so I had to go to the Naval Academy prep school. It was my first full year alone. I was a little angry, straight kid, a little chip on our shoulder who thought women loved assholes. Still moving my feet forward every single day because no one could stop the clock. Until I disintegrate. That was the goal. Just crumble into the ground. Keep your head down. Do as you're told. Do what you need to do. Years of wriggling under that A-type personality, costume, and mask. The military helped me with that. Kept marching forward. A year after the prep school, I finally went to the Naval Academy. And I met my now partner. We were just friends at the start of it, and found proper resources to understand themselves growing up. They had a chance to explore. They allowed me to talk, and with the help of my other friends and meetings, I found out that I wasn't this weird, shameful creature that was laughed at on TV, in person, and in the news. It was the first time I was actually able to separate my sex, gender, and sexuality. My mind exploded. As my fellow trans people like to call it, my egg has cracked. I had the knowledge and the terminology. Now I just had to get to accepting myself. I had to sort out all of my feelings for the next couple of years. At the Naval Academy is where you start your career. You can get cut short because this is during the Don't Ask, Don't Tell era. Fast forward a couple of years. Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. And I became an educator with my friends and trying to be the biggest ally that I possibly could. Now I was trying to give as much information to whoever would listen. The only problem is that Don't Ask, Don't Tell didn't allow trans service members. So although I finally knew who I was, and I could see my other friends being able to openly serve, I decided to keep some things quiet. As I began to accept who I really was, I had to make another big decision. My grandfather was the most manly, stoic, and intimidating man I've ever met. He told me that if I wanted to fly, let's go fly Navy. Even as relaxed as the regulations were, and allowed some of the trans people to serve as we got closer to graduation, it was still not allowed in aviation. Any mental issues would cause you to be grounded and possibly disqualified. Since gender dysphoria isn't something that's just a small, week-long ailment, it was bound to be a career-ending issue. So I chose a safer option. I chose aviation. I don't regret that decision. I turned away from my true self again, because I was afraid. I couldn't take my own life. I couldn't stand up for my true me. I never learned how, and I denied myself again. I made another choice to wait out my entire aviation career. At that point, I had friends and acquaintances who were out and proud trans women. I did the safe bet, and I had learned growing up, you just walk that path. Keep my head down, keep my feet moving, because they can't stop the clock. I went to flight school in sunny Florida. Same place that's illegal for me to be today, actually. I spent most of my days living the queer life with my little queer friends. I could focus on flight school, my career. I could pass as a little queer boy. I had the information of who I was. But I didn't have that courage to be me yet. No matter what, people were just going to see me as queer. I was medically separated from the military for a reason completely unrelated to my gender. I had not only the opportunity, access, but also had the time to transition. But I was in a nervous lock. I was unable to take those steps toward my transition. I had internal, daily monologues over if I was trans enough. What if my family would think? Why me? Am I? Am I not? It wasn't until the pandemic that I had a if not now, when moment. I never thought that I would live to be 18. Then 25, then 30, and now 33. Just like I had known. No one stopped the clock. In every big age milestone, I realized that I wasn't living. It was just surviving. The very first time I came out was in 2011 to my mother while I was crying in a car. I had to come out many times. But my biggest one was in 2021 on Facebook to many supporters. Some who had inklings, some who would never could have guessed. And then eventually some who would leave. I spent my whole life trying to make every single person feel comfortable. Well, I felt wrong. And those who gave me support gave me a little bit of confidence in myself. And those who left affirmed my deep down transphobia and shame in myself. I didn't start hormones until 2022. I had to beg a doctor because I was at my wit's end. Due to a genetic anomaly within my family, there were going to possibly be some complications if I did start hormones. And so they kept pushing it back month after month. On the fourth time that I had traveled out to go get them, I looked at the doctor in the eye and I said, if I don't get on these hormones, you're going to have such a bigger problem. I was ready to take a leap of faith. And not in myself, what I had learned about me and the respect and empathy that I had seen in others. I got hormones that day. Starting hormones and looking for the changes and waiting feels like the first and second day into December. You know that Christmas is coming. It's soon. But you can't force it forward. But just what gave me hope. The changes came slowly. And they're still coming to this day. I have so many things that I'm proud in accomplishing while growing up. I love my family. I've come out of conflict, competition, victorious. I got a college degree. I made an absolutely rock solid and phenomenal friends. I even have my own wings of gold. If nothing, I'm just too dumb to not keep my feet moving. Every single day since I started HRT and living me, I've been able to raise my head just a little higher and see the future just a bit more. Be proud of myself and the beacon for those who need that sound and light. If I can be there for someone to see a happy trans woman living their life, I will be that icon. Might just help out that one person. It took me years, decades. I finally found someone who I'm happy with. And with the help of my friends, my chosen family, and compassionate people, I'm still here today. I've educated military members, some college students on LGBT, specifically trans issues. And this has filled me with immense amount of joy because maybe I can help somebody else understand themselves. My story is not unique. There are others right now dealing with this lack of knowledge for themselves and others. They're even getting a completely different beast, active hatred, being called groomers and pedophiles. If I can help somebody through that darkness, and help them be themselves and like themselves, then I'm going to call this life a success. Not only did I help myself, but I can help at least one other person. Now I'm just here, and I want to live my true self and enjoy whatever time I have left on this floating space rock. I'm now dealing with all those injuries that I subjected myself. A bum knee, got a bum shoulder, my little scars of not knowing enough. I don't want anybody else to hurt. We live in an age where there's so much information from both amazing resources and horrendous propaganda. Seeing all of the hate online and in person and within certain portions of the government, the kids who still wonder about themselves and see that are going to respond to it. And I hope that they never have to go through what I went through. I love my family, and I get a sly smile now whenever I think of the license plate cover. It says, I love my 3 boys. This is my pride. I'm still here. I'm living me, and I'm not walking on eggshells anymore. If this story has resonated with you, please share. Be safe. Happy Pride. I love you all.